Hello everybody, how are you? How are things in your world? I hope good. We're here in beautiful Pittsburgh. As the sun sets, we are getting all kinds of good feedback from people, the sports fans here in town, about our series of fan favorites from the Steelers, Pirates, all of the teams, Penguins especially, hockey fans. Hockey fans are a special breed. And the now defunct Pittsburgh Pitstops NBA team that was such a big part of this city for so long. And some people talking about the hole in their heart they felt when the team left, because, you know, basketball fans are just like hockey fans or any other sport. They're just rabid, and you got that core that live for the team. They go to every game. They know everything about every player. They rant and rave online about every trade. So, sports is emotion. This video, we're going to continue with the Pitstops, because the Pitstops, I think their absence has made the heart grow fonder. And it's funny, because when I started talking about the Pitstops players from, decades past, I didn't think it would get as much response as the other teams, because the other teams are current. But it's funny, it just seems to have awakened a longing in many sports fans here in Pittsburgh about the past of the NBA in town, and how they miss it. Because, when you break up with someone, or something doesn't work out, or you leave a job, or, at first there's just this sense of, let's just move on, it's done. But then years later, you look back on it and you go, wait a minute, what happened? And we're going to cover that in a future video about the Pittsburgh Pitstops, the things that happened. And it's not unusual in the the world of high-level sports, big time Major League Sports, but there's a lot of drama at that organization, and we'll cover that. But for now, we're focusing on individual players that fans have grown to love over the years, and some of their funky town personalities. We got some whack jobs out there. But what makes somebody a whack job on one hand makes them a fan favorite on the other. And, what's wrong with being a little wacky? I've said that for years. So, what do you think I'm doing? So let's talk about three fan favorites of the now defunct Pittsburgh Pitstop NBA team. And again, I'm not an expert. These three players that we're going to talk about in this video, I got it from a guy that was in the waiting room at a Valvoline instant oil change with me, and we were talking about sports, and we started talking about the Pitstops, and he alerted me to these three players because I told him about the video series. He pulled it up on his phone, and he said, "Man, that's great. It's great to see these players highlighted." And he said, "Did you cover these three?" I said, "No, I don't know who they are. I mean, I've been in different cities." So here we go, guys. Three fan favorites from the past, from 1941. Now this is fun. It's Curry Cab. Now Curry Cab, that's his name, Curry Cab. They called him Curry because he was hot. Like hot curry, and he was a center, and for a big man, he had a very soft touch, so they called him Soft Curry Cab, because he could, some of these centers, like let's take Shaq for example, their free throw is a little bit suspect. I know Shaq's out of it, been for a long time, but just as an example, a lot of people know who that is. His free throws were like bricks. But Soft Curry Cab had that beautiful soft touch, and if he ever got fouled, you could count on the points coming back, because the guy could just lob it up there just like a feather landing on a cushion and score. And at the same time, grabbing that ball out of the sky at the jump, he just was an all-around. And Curry had this big giant smile. I mean, the local paper said his face was all teeth, and for those days, he had the gleaming white. Not everybody has that white teeth, but he had that. And you could tell he loved life. He was a simple guy, loved his wife, loved his family, loved the community. And he wasn't native to Pittsburgh, but he loved living down in Homestead and having his kids go to high school down there. And just really what you want in a local fan favorite. And would go to a lot of charity events for people. And they'd go to write him an appearance fee check at the end, and he'd say, "Hey man, just donate it to the cause." And so he probably gave up, I don't know, $3 or $4 million over the years, just turning back his appearance fees because he was getting 50, 60, 70,000 in the early 40s. He was that good and that dominant of a player, and is number one on our list of fan favorites of the Pittsburgh Pitstops. Number 2 was Der Rickham von Winkle. Now, Der Rickham von Winkle sounds like some kind of character from a Around the World in 80 Days movie, flying a biplane over Bavaria or something. But Der Rickham von Winkle was actually one of the better players coming out of Bavaria. And in Bavaria, a lot of the courts, because it has such a mountainous area, a lot of the courts are angled. And so he learned to play on a sloped court, a banked court, meaning that the court itself was not level. And what that gives you is an incredible ability to adapt to a lot of different teams coming at you. Because you can turn your body at an angle. Your feet are still on the floor as they would be if your body was straight up and down. But what he would do was angle the rest of his body, and they didn't know what he was doing. Like, what? You're not sure what's coming at you. And so, again, and in the audience, you didn't know. In the fans, they didn't know. Like, what's happening? It looked like he was defying gravity. In a way. Did you ever see Michael Jackson where he does that thing where he would lean over, right? And it looked like that's what he was doing with a basketball, this guy. Because he grew up on uneven floors and knew how to angle his body in such a way that the opposing team didn't know what he was doing. And therefore he could dribble between their legs. He could dribble it around their waist. He could pop it up over their shoulder and catch it on the other side before they knew what was happening, guys. And the fans went bananas. And this guy, they had a breakfast sandwich named after him downtown at one of the eateries. And they used to cut the bread for the toast at a weird angle because that's what it was. He was the weird angle guy. But, for the decade that he played an instrumental part of the Pitstops. And he didn't really do a lot of appearances outside being on the team. Some players they have so little time with their family. They want to spend time with their family, and he didn't do a lot of that stuff. But he was just a favorite from fans watching him on TV, watching him live, doing his crazy angled play. And the coaches didn't know how to coach him. They just let him go. And again, a major loss that he's still not on the court. So that is number 2. Now, number 3 of our favorite Pittsburgh Pitstop players from the years gone by is in more of a recent one, 1992. Now, remember, the team went defunct in 2007. So Molly Kerr was a player that a lot of people think might have been one of the best NBA players ever. Had he not twisted his ankle in his very first game playing for the Pitstops. And he twisted his ankle because he was doing his patented 720 flip jam. So this guy could not only do a dunk, he could do a rare 720, but then he'd put a flip on it. He'd flip in the air and 720, which, guys, let's be honest, that's an incredibly dangerous move. And sure enough, he's young. He's, when you're 19, he joined the Pitstops when he was 19. He never went to college. let's be honest. That's a dangerous move, and he twisted his ankle doing the 720 flip. Now the weird thing is, he did it the night before when a bunch of the players were out partying and they broke into the arena and were playing basketball and doing high wire, high flying dunks, and he did it that night, no problem, after a couple cocktails. So some cynics have said, why didn't the Pitstops slide him a couple of cocktails before the game? Well, of course you can't do that. That's verboten. You can't be doing that stuff. But he recovered, of course, from that injury, but they say he was never the same. But it didn't seem to matter. I mean, he was the kind of a guy, he was a young guy when he joined the team, and the ladies loved him. And he loved the ladies, and it didn't seem to matter that he had 400 or 500 girlfriends. They all seemed to get along. And sometimes he'd go out on dates, these local clubs here in town with 100, 200 girls in tow. They'd have 50 limos just for that guy. 50 limos. And they were all painted in the Pitstop colors. And they would go out to the clubs, and he'd pay for everything. Sometimes the bill would be like $750,000, But he covered it, and at the end of his playing career, he didn't have a lot in the bank. But what's good is that he didn't notice any change. You didn't notice any change in him when he had 10, 20, 30 million on him in his pocket, or when he had $30. So really, again, that plays in Pittsburgh. That sort of down-to-earth player. The money is a tool and a way to have fun, but it's not that important. And that plays big here because this is a lunch pail town, a workman's town, and they appreciate somebody that, is not highfalutin it. All right, guys, that is number 3 on our list of 3 more fan favorites from the illustrious, deep, rich history of characters in the Pittsburgh Pitstops organization. Come back for more!